Yeah, good morning. Good morning. Hey, just want to welcome you to this, add another layer of welcome onto it. If you're listening in online, a special welcome to you as well. We're wrapping up our series through the book of Amos right here today. So there it goes. We're in Amos chapter 9. That's how that works. Verse 11 to verse 15. And what we've said with this series, Unstoppable God, is this, that Amos is this ordinary shepherd with an extraordinary view of God who's helping us shape our vision of God. And today he's going to take that step just a little bit further down the path, and I'm excited about it. And we're going to start, though, with a story that kind of moves us toward where he's at today. If we can do that. This one, I'll say, starts with a story of a 22-year-old young lady who fell in love with her boss. This 22-year-old woman falls in love with her boss, which from the surface doesn't seem like it's that shocking of a thing. I mean, it's an ordinary story, right? Girl meets boy. Girl is impressed with boy. Boy's like, yes, right? And then they start spending time. You know, girl spends time with boy. One thing leads to another. A relationship comes out of it. A few years later, that's where you find yourself, right? And so from the surface, it sounds like kind of just this harmless thing, right, on the surface. But then you dig down a little bit and you get the details and you get it. She knew from the get-go this wasn't the thing to do. She knew it was wrong, and yet her heart said go even though her head said no. And so she went, followed the heart. 2 years later, the ride ended, and they closed the park, right? The story broke. The news came out. Our sitting president had a 2-year affair with one of his interns. That's the way it was rolled. Public outrage, outcry, and impeachment proceeding came out of it. And so it was that this 24-now-year-old lady, a woman, became a public joke, right? And everyone who heard anything about it, came within 10 feet of it, still has a picture of her in your mind and a picture of a blue dress. There it goes. Her life as she knew it at age 24 was over. And at first, I mean, she kind of rode that wave of celebrity, however backward it was. But then it eventually just kind of drove her underground. I can only imagine millions of people thinking, what about you? There you go. In this 2014 TED Talk, she actually gives some background on it. In that talk, she says, yeah. I mean, she was shamed into silence. Those are her words. And so for 10 years, she just didn't talk to anybody. I mean, close friends, but no media outlets, nothing. There it goes. And in that same TED Talk, though, here's how she started it. Right? Here's how she started it with this question that I think maybe helps us launch into Amos chapter 9 today. Right? She says this at the beginning of the talk. She says, at age 22, I fell in love with my boss. And at age 24, I learned the devastating consequences. Then she said this, can I see a show of hands from anyone here who didn't make a mistake or do something they regret at age 22? What she said then, we can do it now, and you can ratchet it down if you need to. Take it down at any age, right? Can just show of hands. How many of us in here can say we haven't done something that we regret? Right? A choice that we want to take back. She looked around like I am right now, and she's like, yeah, I thought so. I'm going, yeah. Yeah, I certainly have. Look into any of our stories, and I think you're going to find these pages that we all wish we could just rip out. You're going to find these paragraphs that we've written with our life where, these lists of things we've done, and we're just sitting there going, I would love to redact that. Take a heavy black marker and go over every line. That way, if anyone brings it back, they can't read it. They can't bring it against me. They can't even reference it. It's gone. We all have pages that we would like to rip out of our story. See, and I think because that's true, it makes the end of the book of Amos just this incredibly rich and hopeful thing. You hit Amos chapter 9, verse 11 through 15, And it is this grand reversal that brings so much hope into our lives. Right? We've been in this series, Unstoppable God, where we've learned that God is speaking through Amos to the book, or to the nation of Israel. And God's speaking to us too, through this guy Amos. And what we've learned is this, that Israel has these pages that they would like to forget as well. Pages in their story, and God ropes in the first 2 chapters all the other nations into that. And because of those pages, those reprehensible things they've done, God says 8.5 chapters. Judgment's coming. Judgment's coming. It is deserved, and I'm going to describe it. Judgment's coming. And we're sitting there going, wow. What's coming for them? It's coming for me. Bummer. Yeah, 8.5 chapters worth of bummer. Good feeling gone. Right, but then comes Amos 9:11-15. In Amos 9:11-15, you've got this reversal. You've got this switch. You've got this 180-degree turn. This line of demarcation in the story, right? You step into there and all of a sudden you get this glimpse of something different, right? This huge reminder that I believe God wants all of us to take with us as we move out of this series and into the fall, right? And it's this reminder right here. We'll lead with it and then we'll read it. The reminder that yesterday's gone. Those pages have been written, right? Yesterday's gone, but tomorrow can be different. Why? Because this is true. God gets the last word, right? God gets the last word. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow can be different because God gets the last word, right? Read this with me. And as you do, just remember this. The previous 8.5 chapters, if you haven't been reading this with us, previous 8.5 chapters, God going, judgment's coming. It's deserved. I'm describing it. And then God says this, right? You're going, man, where's the hope? What hope is there for me? Verse 11, in that day, God says, I will restore David's fallen shelter. I will repair its broken walls and restore its ruins. I will rebuild it as it used to be, so that they may possess the remnant of Edom and all the nations that bear my name, declares the Lord, who will do all these things. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when the reaper will be overtaken by the plowman and the planter by the one treading grapes. All those connected to farms in the room, you know what he's saying. Wow, that's pretty cool. You can't, so much abundance. It's like you can't cut it down fast enough. It's just coming back. New wine will drip from the mountains and flow from all the hills, and I will bring my people Israel back from exile, right? They will rebuild the ruined cities and live in them. They will plant vineyards and drink their wine. They will make gardens and eat their fruit. Verse 15, I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I've given them, says the Lord your God. You read those verses and God's given Israel and all of us this powerful reminder that yesterday's gone, tomorrow can be different. Why? Because he gets the last word. He gets the last word. And because he gets the last word, there are these promises that are true for our lives. Right? You look at the verbs that we highlighted in that reading, just the verbs alone. And you find the first promise, right? That with this reminder that he gets the last word, you've got the promise that means he gives a new page, right? There's a new page. That's what we have visualized right here. God promising the nation of Israel that, yeah, you've had some bad pages, and because of that, difficulty, pain, punishment, judgment on the horizon, but there's also a different day on the horizon at the same time, right? I've got a new page just for you. I will restore, repair, rebuild, bring, plant, verbs to remind us that something different is coming. Something different's coming. I'm going to bring a new page into your life. A few years ago, I was talking to this guy, Robert, that kind of helped me visualize what's going on here. He was a part of an engineering and architect, like engineers and architects. Let's put them together as a team to help save this library project. prominent city, sunk millions of dollars into this library project. They're building a library, and they got into building it, and they realized something's off here. Like, something ain't right. You know, what's going on here? And my understanding, what they found out was the foundation had been poured wrong. Someone made a small mistake, and so what was designed to be like this, right, something like that, ended up being like this. Maybe this, I don't know, right? But it was supposed to be like this, and it went, right? That's how it went. So they're framing it up going, stuff isn't fitting. You know, what's going on here? So what they ended up having to do, this group came in, they're like, all right, rip that blueprint out. You know, time to get new page, right? New plan, a new process, right? We got to rip that foundation out, and we have to start again. Right? We've got to start again on a fresh page. We got to have a different sort of story here so we can get a different sort of outcome that leads in the right direction, right? And you hear that, and you get exactly what God's doing right here in the book of Amos chapter 9. You've got 8.5 chapters worth of God saying, Israel, whenever I established you as a nation, I did this. Right? I had this plan for you, man. I laid your foundation before I laid the foundation of the world. You know, I knew exactly what it was going to look like. Here it goes. You know what you did with my foundation? Even though you knew where the lines were at. You've got all of these themes that he's had through the book. You decided to live a more at any cost lifestyle. You decided that you could treat sex and sexuality however you wanted to. You thought that you could, hoard your money and spend it on yourself. You thought that you could work the system and make up your own rules, You thought you could do all of those things. And because of that, because you live that way, you've warped what I created. Right? You've turned it into something that is shaky at best. It's not the sort of structure that's going to endure. And so what I have to do is judge you, right? One of my favorite definitions of the word judge is God putting things back to right. Right? God clearing the mechanism so a new start can begin. So 8.5 chapters of God saying, you know what? Here we go. And you look at that and you get a glimpse into what he does in our lives as well. Refining us, remaking us. You look at Israel and you're going, man, they do not have a corner on the market for, being, having a black belt in doing things their own way. We are fiercely independent, even of God. Man, we will do our own thing. We will do whatever we want to do. Even though we know that God has this foundation that He's laid for our lives, right? Even though we know that this foundation that speaks to, that's your family life and church life and devotional life and work life. Even though we know that, even though we know there's certain, or let's go this way, even though there's a way we're supposed to relate to God and relate to other people, and there's certain actions and attitudes and behaviors and habits that are inbounds and ones that are out, even though we know that, even though we know God has a plan for, our work ethic, here's how we do that, and I don't know, money, finance, forgiveness, care, concern, all those things, even though we know that, we're still going to come to that and go, well, what about that? Well, what about that over there? And we look at it. And we think about it. We rationalize it. Won't be that bad. No one will find out. Don't I deserve it? Oh, come on. Really? God said that? Come on. Then we do it. And then we defend it. Right? We'll find something else, Look at it, think about it, rationalize it, do it, defend it. We look, we think, we rationalize, we do, we defend. We look, we think, we rationalize, we do, we defend. Right? And at the end of the day, right, through one small decision after another, we've created this shaky foundation for our life that we can't build solidly on. one that God's blessing certainly isn't flowing to. And so like God does to them, 8.5 chapters, God says, look, here's what's got to happen. Got to clear the mechanism in your life. And God has different ways of doing that. For some of you, you found God just like giving you a promotion, right? You got a promotion, and all of a sudden your life as you knew it was just in an uproar. You're going, how in the world do I handle this? Everything I once knew is gone. People that loved me now hate me. Maybe God does this through some sort of difficulty, a breakup even, where God's going, no, that's got to go away so that I can start again. Right? 8.5 chapters, you're reminded of this, but then, right, God doesn't leave you there. You turn to verse 11, chapter 9, and God says this, but remember, I have a new page. Right? Because I get the last word. There's the promise of a new page for your life, and that's good news. Right? Because that promise is followed by this one, right? You go back to Amos chapter 9, verse 1 to 11, and you say, okay, that promise points to this one, the promise of a fresh start. Amos 9, God promises those verbs, right? I will restore, repair, rebuild, bring, plant. And the net result of that is going to be a new life for a nation, a fresh beginning, fresh start, right? I am going to bring that into your life. Right? When God brings a new page, you partner with him, he's going to write a new story, give a fresh start on that page. By the way, that's a promise that's new every morning. I love it. Right? New promise with a new outcome. I love the way it looks for the nation of Israel. Right? Anyway, you go to verse 13 and 14, God says the days are coming. Right, declares the Lord, when the reaper will be overtaken by the plowman, the planter by the one treading grapes, new wine will drip from the mountains, flow from the hills, and I will bring my people Israel back from exile. They'll rebuild the ruined cities and live in them. They'll have a new life. God writing a blessed life. New page, new story. I dig it. Years ago, there's this guy who asked J.R.R. Tolkien what it was that prompted him to write that classic book, The Hobbit, right? How many of you have read that book? Just play with me, that way I know my audience. There you go. It's classic. It's pretty good. There and back again. There we go with it. What was it that gave you the idea? He was a professor at Oxford. Really? You're going to write this book that they immediately marketed to kids? Really? How'd that work? And he told him about the day he was grading papers. He gave an exam, professor, gets this exam back. He's got this pile he's working through. And in that exam, he had at least one essay question, and he left space for them to answer the essay question, like a blank page in the exam. And he's working through that whenever he finds this one exam where the student didn't put anything on it. They just left it blank. And I think our take on what he then experienced and what then happened would go something like this. Right? You've got a student whose test was unfinished, right? Incomplete. Right? But it had this extra page that the student hadn't gotten to, maybe, right? So here's the deal. What the student hadn't gotten to, the teacher got to. Right? That page that the student hadn't written on, the teacher began to write on. Right? That story that the student hadn't gotten to putting down, teacher put down. He told a story starting on that page. Ended up telling to his kids at night whenever they asked him, Dad, tell us a story, tell us a story. And he wrote it down for all of us. It's lived on through the years. A story, and I'm going, I see that, and I get a picture of what God can do in our lives. What Amos is reminding us is that God does that. Not only does he give a new page, but he will write on that page. And I even like what he says about the way God writes. When you let him write in your life, man, you've got blessing and growth, harvest, plenty. But here's the thing, and you got to understand this about it. Right? God doesn't do that because we deserve it. God doesn't do that because there's something, somehow special about Rory. That God's just going to give him extra surprises and good stuff. No. Now, one thing we all have in common is the fact that there are pages back here in our past that we like to rip out. Right? There are stories that we wish we could redact. Man, I made that mistake. I wish I could buy it back. We all have that going down. Right? But this promise of a fresh start, it rests on something different, and I love that. It's not about us. Guess what? It's about who God is. Ephesians chapter 2, Paul puts it this way. He just says that because of his great love for us, God who is rich in mercy. There it is. God who is rich in mercy made us alive with Christ even when we were dead. Like dead in our transgression, dead because of the junk we'd done. Right? Even though those pages then weren't good, God had another one that was incredibly good in Jesus. God gets it, he writes on it, not because of anything we've done, but because of his great love for us. And we call that process, this word right here, it's the word grace. Grace. God's riches because of what Christ has done. It's by grace you've been saved. Now, friends, there's a new page God's going to write on. You know, this beginning that comes from another beginning's end, right? God through Christ is going to do this, not because of what we've done, but because of his great love. And that's significant, right? It's made even more significant by the third promise, right? They all rest on each other. You go back to Amos 9, 11 to 15, and you find the third one. Right? That God getting the last word. And not only does that mean we got a new page, a fresh start, but it means we have a living hope too. 5 different times in this passage, God reminds them that hope is on the horizon. Right? And 5 different times with that, he tells you why. You go there and you're going, personal pronoun, should have gotten it. God says it's because I will restore, I will repair, I will rebuild, I will bring and plant time and time again. God reminds them then that before judgment, before the entire book of Amos, they were brought together as a nation because God loved them. Right? The love of God built them up then, and the love of God even sustained them when they were doing their worst. And guess what? When this story ends, same God who was there building them up, holding them up, he'll build them up again. He'll build them up again. And what he does for them, he does for us. I like that. The idea of a living hope. A living hope. When we hit the end of everything we hold sacred, he's still going to be there. Life can throw its worst at us because our hope isn't dead. Our support isn't shaky. Our God hasn't gone anywhere. I love that, a living hope. Right, that hope that we hold on to today. Right, and so even though you read Amos, first 8.5 chapters, and you're thinking, man, foundation ripped up because what I'm doing's out of kilter and I know it. Even though you look at that and you go, man, that can be painful. For a number of reasons, I like it that way. I'm comfortable with it. I like my income here. I like my identity here. I like being, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, I like doing that, being a part of that, church being like that, marriage like that, or I liked my relationships here. I liked what I did for fun over here, or, I liked, living resentment, being a victim, now it's getting ripped up and everyone knows it's my fault, I like not having to worry about other people's feelings. Just being a jerk, just say it how it is. There it is. I liked it so much. Even though hearing that foundation, make it ripped up, can be painful. There's promise there. Even though it can be, painful because it's unsettling and disorienting and frustrating, there's a promise, right? That before it all and in the midst of it all and after it all stands the God over it all, and that God gets the last word. Maybe there's something there. 15 years ago, a little bit over 15 years ago, my wife and I had to go to the hospital, right? My wife was in extreme pain. Right? So, your wife's in pain, you go to the hospital, especially when she's pregnant and about to give birth, right? So we go to the hospital. Sorry to do that to you. I was going to have a way more fun with it. Moving on, right? We go to the hospital. At the end of the day, we have this beautiful baby girl, right? And we get to bring her home from the hospital, and I quickly found out that baby girl threw our life as we knew it into absolute upheaval. I liked things this way, and now, I like getting to sleep. That was a novel idea. I like so many things. I've said that with each child, God's blessed us with a little bit more of my own selfishness has had to die. What's that me saying? That's me saying, man, my routine, my life as I knew it, man, that had to go away. Bring her home and she's screaming at night, all that stuff. Here's the thing. We figured it out, though. We figured it out. But about the time we figured it out, you know what happened? She grew up on us, new stage, she's running all over the place and our life, boom, into upheaval. So we get that under wraps, and then she hits another one about the time we have another one, and we're going, oh my goodness, what's going on? More selfishness, more of my routine. You have to adjust. We moved a few times during those years, and every move you're just going, what in the world is happening on so many different levels? Fast forward. That was 15 years ago that journey started. Now she's 15, just hit high school on me, right? And my kids have been consistently disobedient to me and therefore dishonoring to God, right? They defy my leadership in the home by refusing to obey me when I tell them to never grow up, right? Hear me now, thou shalt not grow up. They continue to grow up, and with that, just that. And so many of you are like, she's just 15. I'm going, what are you saying with that? You're saying, I've been through it. I'm on the other side. And I can even testify more than you that in life, those things you hold on to, they keep passing away. They keep passing away. See, and I hear that. And the great God, I believe, who created all of us, he's saying that. Right there, that. And this is what we just talked about, that. Because we can put our hope in so many different things. Put our hope and our trust in so many things, having the right routine and getting that figured out. We can put our hope in becoming successful and getting established, having the right sort of salary, living in a certain sort of government, having the right sort of relationship, right? We can put our hope in so many different things that naturally change. They just naturally change. And then whenever you take in the idea that God will tear foundation stones out that need to be torn out so that we can build the last, you've got this picture where we're going, oh my. Oh my. And you take all of that up and you're reminded just how powerful then this promise is that we have a living hope. We have a God before it all, during it all, after it all, who is over it all. A hope that serves, get this, New Testament says, as an anchor for our soul. When everything else is going like nuts, we have this living hope that reminds us there's a new page. It reminds us there's a fresh start. Why? Because there's a God who gets the last word. And so would you believe that today? Would you believe that no matter where you're at today, that God gets the last word in your life, in all of life? Gets the last word, not just in the book of Amos, right? But in everything. And because he gets the last word, would you believe that you have the promise right now of a new page? I used to remind my daughters, time and again at night. Hey, just remember, might have ripped it from a movie. Tomorrow's fresh, no mistakes in it. No mistakes in it. There's a new page tomorrow, right? Would you believe that? There's a new page that God wants to partner with you in writing. Right? And there's a living hope that will greet us in that place. Would you believe that? And then would you give God that last word? Right? Would you trust him with your life and move in that direction? Right? Would you let him close the book on so many of those pages that we hold on to, so many of those pages we just keep going back and reading from and reading into where we're at? Would you let him close that book and start a new book in your life? Right? Would you let him rip the foundation out, or the foundation stones out that keep you from building to last? And would you let him unhook you from the things you still hold on to and put your hope in so that you can find that living hope? Would you give him the last word in this place today? Because you know this is true. You can't get to the next page till you stop going to all the other pages, right? Can't do that. Can't build with integrity unless you've got the right sort of foundation. And we know that. And you can't find a living hope. You can't see a living hope when you're so focused on so many other things, putting your hope in them. So would you let God have the last word here today and let him speak that over your life? And I don't know what you heard when I said that, or maybe what God's been speaking to you right now. I don't know what living that last word looks in your life. I jotted down a few things that I said, you know what, maybe this is true. Maybe this is true. And I had to borrow from a few of them. I said, maybe for you, giving God the last word looks like a different action in your life today, where you're hearing this and you're realizing, you know what, my foundation looks like this. And God's saying what he said to Israel, return to me. Return to me. So God's saying right here today, you know what, you need to repent. You need to repent. You need to stop walking that road that lets you do whatever you want, broad road, and come back to the narrow road. Come back to this. God's saying different actions needed for you. Maybe this, hearing this, giving God the last word looks like a different direction in your life. I've been pulling this way, and I know God's saying, look, for me to write what I need on this new page, here, these are the choices. These are the choices right here. And so God's guiding you there. Maybe God's even guiding you in a different direction as a forward-looking one. God's saying, look, got a new page. Just stop looking back at the other ones. Man, they're good for memories, bad for memorials. Move into my next for you. Move into that. Hold on to that, especially if this was rough. Maybe this looks like a different interpretation where you're looking at your life and you're just going, you know what, I'm a failure. I'm a no account, nobody. I don't measure up. I never da-da-da. And God's going, nah, hold on. Hold on. That shaky foundation, let me speak into your life who you are now. Let me show you what I've been able to even do through you. These pages in your past. Maybe it looks like an interpretation, maybe anticipation, where God's just preparing you right now for that page. Right now where you're at, it's rough. It's rough. You came in here and you're hurting. Right? I know that. If only because so many of you share some of the things you're struggling with on prayer cards, and we get to wrestle with you in prayer through that. Right? You come and you're hurting, and you're still in the midst of that. So God's saying maybe me getting the last word leads to a different anticipation where you know there's hope on the horizon because you have a living hope right now. You have it right now. Maybe it's just different obedience. God's saying, you know what to do. You know what to do. Well, let's do it. Let's go. And whatever it is, would you, in this place today, give God the last word in your life? Would you do that? I want you to stand with me. We'll have some time with this. The band's going to play with us and lead us into a time of invitation. If you want to say, hey, you know what? I want Jesus as foundation for my life. I've never made that decision. I want to get baptized into him. We'll have time for that. I know we have a couple who are going to come up, so you can join them in case you're on the fence with that. There you go. And maybe you're here today and God just needs to do some business in your heart. Just let him do that. Let him do that as we sing this. And as always, if you need prayer, just find someone with a tag. I'll get mine on. Let's do this.